slightly bad news on the new alloys. I'm in the coupe right now, as you can probably tell, and I just joined a dual carriageway for the first time on the new wheels, and I wasn't really planning on driving very far on them until I got new tyres, because they look a bit ancient, but I thought I'd just give them a quick try just to see how things were looking. As soon as I got to sort of 50 miles an hour on a smooth bit of road, the whole car is just shaking and juddering. Does not feel very good at all, so I'm gonna have to be taking these off the car until I get some new tyres put on them, because the car, I just decided, isn't safe to use on these wheels until I've bought a new set of tyres for them.
Proud to be sponsored by Diamond Bright, the car care products that have been keeping the Furious fleet looking their best for a long time already. To find all you need to keep your car clean and protected, follow the link below to diamondbright.co.uk. Well, hello and welcome to Furious Driving, and that little interlude there was me trying to drive on these wheels for about a mile, but I didn't want to change the wheels over until I changed the tyres. But the fact was, it was too grim and too dangerous to drive at all in them, so the wheels are now off, and since I'm getting new tyres, I thought it would be a good idea to refurbish them, because there's a few chips and marks on these wheels which are otherwise in very nice condition. I had the option to get them refurbished professionally for about £200, which is a pretty good price, I thought. However, I thought I could save a few pounds, I could have a bit of fun, a bit of practical, do-it-yourself time with these wheels. So I went down to the local proper car paint place and had some correct colour silver paint mixed up. And I was going to go for like a darker gunmetal kind of grey, or just a darker metallic blacky colour to make it look really quite cool. But then I realised I wouldn't be able to mask up these Rover badges in the centre caps very accurately, at least not convincingly, and that would always be bothering me. So I had to mix up paint that was the correct silver for these wheels, so it will match and will look nice and original. And by the time I bought some Q-Bond filler to fill the scuffs and marks in the rims. Bought some etch primer, bought some lacquer, I should say the good lacquer as well, not the cheapy lacquer from off the shelf, and everything else, primer. I went to about £140, so why am I here in the smelly corner of the garden by the compost heap, about to spend the next several hours sanding wheels? Oh yeah, because it makes a good video, that's why. Anyway, well, at least you guys get a film out of it. And before I begin, I will just say, if you like the look of my Rover mug, which I'm a big fan of, you can find that in the Redbubble store. There's a link in the bottom of the video underneath. So starting off with some fairly heavy grit, it's 240 grit I think, just to get a key, work down through the worst of the damage we've got on here. This is actually exactly the same corner where I refurbed all the Mondeo wheels 3 years ago. It's quite nice, it's out of the wind, well, a bit out of the wind compared to the rest of the garden and the driveway. I did once contemplate see if I could take that fence down and enlarging that shed, think it seemed like an original Mini or a Fiat 500 in this little corner. But apparently I'm not allowed to. That's just silly. I think it's quite sensible actually. Yeah, that'll be the dog, or one of them anyway. This is Mike. Mike came with his name. I wanted to call him Cooper because he's a rescue dog, and we picked him up near the Mini factory, so I thought Cooper was a really good name. You still answer to Cooper, don't you? He likes to play with stuff a lot. And that's Indy. Indy's also a rescue dog with no sausage dog owner whatsoever, even despite the looks. The reason she's called Indy? Because we called the dog Indiana. The joke I've wanted to do for a long time. No one gets it. Clearly I'm busy. Yeah, I can see the bone, but I'm busy. One down, 3 to go. This one actually looks a bit more battered than the first one. Where it's possible and where it looks like it's a fairly smooth gouge, I'm trying to sand it back fairly heavily so I've not got to refill it. I can just take the damaged paint back to, well, pretty much the metal, and hopefully I won't have to refill it. I'll just smooth it enough with the paper and that'll be easier in the long run. Obviously in places it's a deeper gouge, well just there it's quite deep, and these gouges here on the spokes on this particular wheel are quite deep as well, so that's going to take some filling. This one's rim has been done all the way around, literally the entire circumference. Well, now comes the fun bit, and by fun I do of course mean fraught with a high probability of failure, because I'm going to be using stuff called Q-Bond, which I've heard of, but I've never actually experienced before. I think someone recommended I use it for trying to repair the broken A-post and C-post inner panels, what do you call them? Trim, that's the word, on the Volvo after I snapped them doing the headlining. And I went to go and buy some off Amazon, but it never turned up. So I've now got some, and this is the big box, which has got the grey or black filling and reinforcing powder for plastics, which I'll go and use on the Volvo. Now I've got some. And it's also got one small bottle of powder, but this is the grey reinforcing and filling powder for aluminium. Now I'm hoping it's not going to be too windy out here, because it is quite windy. I've got half a dozen tubes of quick bonding ultra strong adhesive. Oops, I'm going to have to take the dog indoors, because the reason there's no door on this is because he pulled it off to eat the compost. I just had to move him away because he was eating a flower pot, and I don't want him to eat this. So Mike, come on, let's go inside. Okay, so I've never used this stuff before. All the guy said in the shop was, make sure it's lying down. Oh crikey, it's falling out already. What is the worst that could happen, apart from me destroying his wheels and wasting a lot of money? God, that's very fine powder. Here's a twig. Let's do fine quality automotive repair with a twig. I don't know how long this takes to set. I'm guessing it's quite fast. God, the twig's quite a good applicator, to be honest. It's quite flexible. Okay, let's try this other little gouge here. See how this one goes. It wasn't windy when I started, now it's windy. So now there is lots and lots of sanding, and I mean lots of sanding. Starting with a 240 grit, I've actually gone down to 120 grit in places. What I found was that putting the powder on first and adding the glue afterwards wasn't really working very well, because the grazes aren't particularly deep, they're just lots and lots of tiny ones, and so the powder just tends to blow away and they're not mixed with the glue. So adding a bit of glue, then pouring powder onto it afterwards seems to do the trick here. And then it's just hours and hours of sanding. And I know that even though I've put a ridiculous amount of time into this sanding, the moment I see the paint on it, I'm not going to be happy with it. Now we've done the sanding, everything appears to be smooth, let's bung on. Let's put on some etch primer. Although, and the idea of etch primer is it will bond to metal, to paint, to all kinds of surfaces. But that said, this is apparently, or it does appear to be, reacting slightly strangely. So I'm going to have to sand the etch primer back more than I was expecting to. I'm just topping in bits where I've noticed it's gone on a bit thin. So I'm not worried about masking it, so I don't care about getting these painty. And I've obviously put some polythene sheeting down so I don't paint the ground, because that's never a good look. But yeah, there's quite a lot of strange reaction which really shouldn't be getting with etch primer. So this has had some strange reactions. It's run in a couple of places, which I was quite surprised at, because I was only really lightly dusting it on. And it's got this weird kind of fisheye bubbles as well, which is very strange. This being the etch primer, the point of it is to not do this, but it has done it. So guess what? I'm now doing more sanding. Do you know what I think? If there's one takeaway from this, it is don't bother doing this yourself. It's not that expensive to get it done professionally. The results will be better, and you'll feel a lot less stressed in the long run. This one looks to be okay. There's hardly any problems at all on this one. So I wonder what the difference was. But I'm using 800 grit now. I'm working through progressively finer and finer sandpapers as we go through. So ultimately it'll be like 2,500 grit on the last coat. Now I think I figured out why it's going all bubbly on the paint, these kind of weird fish eyes. My fault, I picked up just a duster at random to dry the wheels after I've been wet sanding them, and didn't really give it a second thought. But then as I was just dusting it a second time, I realised that it kind of smelt of that wax polish. I think I was putting like a waxy polish onto the wheels before I was painting it, and so that's why the the etch primer was reacting with it. Right, so I've given it a coat of undercoat, and what you see there is one of the problems. The white primer has highlighted a couple of runs that I missed in the etch primer. They're more visible now. And also, those mongrels there I've left some dog hairs in it. There weren't even dogs out here, but still there are dog hairs in the paint somehow. So I'm giving these like the lightest possible sanding you can imagine, because I don't really want to take any paint off, but I just want to smooth them a little bit. So that's why I'm using 800 grit now, just to go between the coats. One thing I did notice though, or did find, is that this shape, the shape of these wheels is unbelievably hard to paint, because there's so many alcoves and curves and everything else that it's just really hard to get even coverage over it without getting runs, without getting areas with no paint on at all. The more perceptive of you may have noticed it's got dark, because it does that. That's how days work. So, because it's going to be raining tomorrow, I want to get this finished tonight, let this harden overnight, and get the new tyres tomorrow while it's raining. Now, I've got 3 cans of this silver, which is matched up to colour number 61096, which may mean something to someone somewhere, and that should be the colour match correct for these Rover wheels. I've been soaking them in a pan of gently warm water, just to increase the pressure in the can, and hopefully give better flow and coverage. And before I started doing this, I sanded these, I dry sanded with 1200 grit. Just very, very, very lightly indeed, to give a nice smooth surface to hopefully give a good result. I'm trying to go incredibly lightly to avoid getting any runs, but I'm sure there will be runs. I know it's dark out, but these do actually look quite good here in the dark. I often say the dark is the best way to look at my painting. Well, I bought 3 cans, because that's what the guy recommended in the shop. I've used 1 can completely, and they actually look quite good. I thought I got a couple of runs, but they seem to have just disappeared. That's what you get when you buy decent quality paint, I suppose. It's about £20 a can, so it wants to be good. I've got a couple of spots which I couldn't see in the dark that I hadn't quite covered, but the next can will take care of that. It's got a really nice sparkle to it actually. This is really nice paint. I wasn't sure in the dark, I thought I might get away with just using 1 can, but clearly I won't. Now, these spray cans are from a company called Kent Paints, where they mix up stuff. It's like a proper trade shop, and the nozzles on these things are so much better than the Halford's rattle cans. It's worlds apart. It's so much easier to get really good coverage and a smooth finish than it was with the Halford's stuff. I mean, there is a big price difference. The Halford's spray cans are what, £7 or £8? This, as I say, is about £20 a can. But if you get a much better result, then surely it's worth it. Someone asked me for advice about painting the other day on the internet, and the advice I gave was preparation is everything. And looking at this now in this kind of really stark light, I've put a floodlight thing up over there, I can actually see where I've not done it properly. I'm a victim of my own poor preparation. And finally, finishing up with some lacquer. This is the Pro XL lacquer, which is the stuff that professionals use, and it's a really nice stuff again, like the paint. The challenge here, the double challenge in fact, first of all is to get a good finish, so putting on enough that it goes thick and glossy, but not so much that it runs. If you put too little on, it goes speckly and nasty. Put too much on, it runs. The second challenge I've got is spiders now. The spiders have all come out to play, and I've actually found spider webs in the paint, which is not what I was expecting. I think I've got it. I'm going to quit while I'm ahead. I've seriously overbought on the lacquer, because I've not even completed this 1 can. I've still got the second one to go, but the finish looks pretty decent at the moment, so I'm going to walk away before I ruin it by doing too much, which is what I normally do. Get to the point where I think that's good, 1 final squirt, and I've ruined it. Well, seeing them in daylight, I can't decide if I'm happy or not. There's some raindrops on these, so it looks worse than it actually is, but there's a few imperfections, things that did get missed when I was sanding it as the light went down last night. So now I do kind of wish I'd spent the extra little bit and done professionally, but you know, they'll certainly look better than they did before, so I'll go with that. Now I'm just going to load them up in the car, take them into town, get some tyres fitted. So back with fresh new rubber. This looks so lovely and shiny. Oh, the smell is lovely. New tyres are the best. It's like new shoes if you're a normal person. These are Uniroyal Rainsport 5s. I think I had Uniroyals on the MR2, which took track down a couple of times in the rain actually. But look how deep this tread is. This looks so exciting. These are the rain type. Apparently they're shark skin technology, and there is a little picture of a shark in the tread, which is quite fun. Now, didn't go 100% to plan. One thing I did do was get a bit too enthusiastic and head down without realising before it completely set. So the fitting machine left a couple of marks in the rim, and there's actually a couple of thumbprints in the lacquer because I was just too excited to get the wheels fitted back on the car again. I should have waited another day to let it all set and cure properly, but I was just too keen and my own fault. So I had to repaint, mask up and repaint 2 of the wheels, which was a bit of a pain, but you know, actually in the long run I think that's actually quite a good thing, because it means these 2 which I've re-sanded some more and then re-lacquered again, I've actually got a slightly better finish than the ones which didn't get handprints in them. In fact, I'm now seeing in the light there are a few more little marks. Oh well, I'll get them repainted professionally one day. I've got a proper refurb shop, they'll do a better job, much faster than I would have done it as well. Right, let's get these onto the car. It took so long masking these tyres up, these 2 tyres up, it almost seems a shame to actually unmask them again. Quite like the old-timey look, kind of like an instant white wall tyre effect. And normally, when I've done masking wheels in the past, I've used a playing card trick where you put a deck of cards narrow end into the gap, and that works really well, but I couldn't find any playing cards this time. Now looking at these markings, it doesn't say anywhere that these are directional. It's got inside and outside, but there's no arrow marking on it to say that these are directional tyres, so I'm hoping it doesn't matter which side of the car these go on. If I'm doing one job, I will put it off until I've got 9 others to make the whole thing worthwhile. So although I'm switching my wheels over to my new wheels with new tyres, and these old 10-year-old Semperits were very good, but they are age cracked now, and the new wheels look fantastic. I've also got my adjusters, so I can take another 5 turns of my coilover adjustment to try and lower the car a tad more, and also got a bag of new nuts and bolts. I can have one size of nut on each wheel, because that's really irritating having 3 different sizes of nut and bolt on the car. Okay, it's a little bit darker now, because after I got hooted at because I'd parked in the middle of the drive and Mrs. Furious couldn't park in the drive, so she was annoyed, she went indoors and found the dog had been sick all over the sofa. So thanks Mike, we just spent a little while cleaning the living room, which was disgusting. Now we can get back to this. Let's get rid of the smell of dog sick with a swig of tea from the Furious driving mug. Will grace any workshop, dining table, desk or office and make them look very cool indeed. And it helps buy things like bags of nuts. So thank you very much indeed to one of the Furious viewers who put me onto this link on eBay. I think it's £16 for this bag of butts. 16, it makes them about £1 each, I guess. And there is what looks like a dead spider leg in the back of that wheel. Now I should probably put the locking wheel nut back in, but these will look actually quite nice, don't they? Certainly nicer than the manky old locking wheel nut. Do people still steal wheels? I don't know. Is that still a thing? Now, are these 19s? Yes, they are. As I've said before, always go around with an actual hand tightening wrench afterwards just to make sure it is as tight as it's meant to be. These rear springs really are still absolutely mare to do. You'd think the front ones, with all the extra stiffness for the weight of the engine, would be more difficult. But no, it's the front ones that are hard. But no, it's the back ones that are difficult. Where's the bag? That's number 3. Hurrah! Three down, 1 to go. Those rear ones are so much harder than the front ones to adjust. Last one. Now the finishing touch, the centre caps. I said at the beginning the reason I've gone with plain silver rather than like a hint of like a shadow black or a gunmetal was because I didn't want to have to try and match these. So let's hope these are actually the right shade of silver. So there we go, my new to me Rover BRM style Cosmos alloys are now refurbished and looking fantastic, and have got lovely new rubber on them, so they're much safer, much nicer riding. So even without adjusting the suspension anymore, it's going to be a better ride than before, because 10-year-old rubber, no matter how good the brand, is never that great. And that little adjustment, another 5 winds, it's gone from, having moved the car back and forth, before it was about kind of 3 fingers of gap between the top of the tyre and the bottom of the arch. It's now sort of 2.5 fingers of gap, so it's closed it a little bit more. So it's getting more to where I would like the ride to be. I haven't tried adjusting the rebound yet. I'm going to take a bit of a drive first on these new tyres and see what the ride's like first. But yes, so here's the takeaway for what have we learned from this video bit. Well, the advantage of refurbing tyres at home, well, you save an awful lot of money first of all. It's much cheaper to do it yourself in the shed, and you have the satisfaction of knowing you've done a job yourself. Downside, of course, it's not quite as hard wearing. It's not quite as nice a finish, and there's a few little defects where I didn't do it quite as nicely as a professional refurb would have done, and it takes a long time. It's a lot of faff doing this. So next time I think I'll just spend the money. Thanks for watching. I'm going to go now sort out the cover on Quentin, the Hateful Eight, because I didn't leave the straps done up underneath him because I'm a fool, and it rained really hard last night and it pulled the cover in, and it's now full of water. So I need to go and drain that out somehow. So this is what happens if you've got a convertible under a cover with the roof down, as I have here, and it storms heavily in the night and you've not done up the straps to keep it taut across the top of the car. The weight of the water fills it with rain, and there's, I don't know, several gallons in there, which is far too much to lift. How annoying is that? Yay, Quentin. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this, please like and subscribe as always, and of course, see you again next time fixing something else. I might even work on the V8 or the Mercedes.